The year was 281 AC, and the kingdoms of Westeros simmered beneath a fragile peace. Whispers of unrest floated like mist through the halls of noble houses. Lords spoke carefully in public, but in their keeps and chambers they muttered of a king gone mad. Aerys II Targaryen, once noble, now lost in the flames of paranoia. It was against this backdrop that House Went of Harrenhal announced the most extravagant tourney in living memory. Lords from across the Seven Kingdoms were invited. Knights would joust for glory. Gold would pour like wine. And at the center of it all, it was expected, no, assumed, that the king himself would attend. After all, what better way to prove his control over the realm than by gracing such a gathering? But Aerys II did not come. At first, many believed the news to be false. Ravens lie, maesters make errors. The king would never turn his back on such a show of loyalty. But the days passed, and his dragons never came. His banners never flew over Harrenhal's blackened towers. The Iron Throne remained in the Red Keep, and the man who ruled it stayed hidden within, surrounded by wildfire and fear. Why, they asked, nobles, knights, common folk alike? Why would the king snub such a moment? The answer was whispered in shadows. It began with Lord Varys the Spider. He had returned from one of his secret travels just days before the announcement, pale and shaken. It was said he warned the king of danger, of betrayal lurking within the very walls of Harrenhal, of plots that would use the tourney as cover for something far darker. Some said the whispers came from his little birds. Others claimed he saw it in a dream. But however the truth reached him, Aerys believed it. He called his council. Rhaegar Targaryen stood tall beside him, calm and quiet as always. But Aerys, he ranted, he screamed that the wolves and lions would bare their teeth the moment he stepped outside the Red Keep, that the Starks and the Lannisters had been too quiet, that the whispers of rebellion were beginning at Harrenhal. Let them play their games, Aerys spat, pacing around his smoky chamber, the green flames of wildfire casting eerie shadows on his face. Let them drink and cheer and smile at each other. I will not give them a target. They will wait for me to come, but I won't. Rhaegar tried to reason with him. He spoke of appearances, of trust, of peace. But Aerys only stared at his son with those sunken, paranoid eyes and muttered, even you are too loved." And so the king did not attend. In his absence, the tourney became more than just sport. It became a symbol of defiance, of unity without the Iron Throne. Lords laughed louder, alliances tightened. The young dragon Rhaegar shone like a sun among stars, winning every joust with grace and unmatched skill. And then came the moment that would shape all of Westeros, the moment when Rhaegar Targaryen placed the crown of winter roses in the lap of Lyanna Stark, passing by his own wife, Aelia Martell. It was a moment whispered about for years to come. But all of that began with a single choice: the king's refusal to attend. Some say he feared assassination. Others claim it was a trap of his own design, to see who would act boldly in his absence. But a few, those who truly understood the nature of fire and madness, they believed something else. That the Mad King saw the future, not with magic nor prophecy, but in a way only the truly broken can, through instinct twisted by fear. He saw that the tourney would begin a chain of events that would lead to his own downfall. And so he stayed away. But fate does not bend so easily, because while the king remained locked within his throne room, Westeros moved forward without him. And in his silence, Rhaegar stepped closer to destiny. Lyanna Stark's life would never be the same, nor would Brandon Stark's, nor would Robert Baratheon's. The world had shifted, and Aerys wasn't there to stop it. All because of that one question that echoed through the halls of Harrenhal and the kingdoms beyond. Why didn't the king come?
Aerys stared into the green flicker of wildfire as if it could show him the future. The glass vials lined the chamber, dozens of them, more than ever before. His pyromancers worked day and night, their faces shining with sweat and soot, whispering incantations in the tongues of old Valyria. The king called it preparation. Others whispered it was obsession. The wildfire wasn't for war, not yet. It was for control. "If they raise him up," he muttered one night, pacing in circles, "I'll burn it all down. Let them sit on ash and bone if they think the dragon will die quietly." He spoke more to the fire now than to his council. Only Varys stayed at his side consistently, his bald head bowed, his voice always gentle. But even Varys, master of secrets, was beginning to worry. The king was spiraling, faster than ever before. "He dreams of fire," he whispered one evening to Grand Maester Pycelle after leaving the throne room, "but not the kind that warms, the kind that consumes." Back at Harrenhal, the tourney had ended, but no one left. The event had become something larger than celebration. It was now a court without a king, a new gathering of power where the realm's greatest names lingered to talk, drink, and quietly test the air. The older lords were wary, the younger ones restless, and Rhaegar, for all his calm exterior, felt the weight of every glance. He had not intended to place the crown of love on Lyanna Stark, but in that moment something in him had broken free. Duty had kept him beside Elia Martell, but love, or perhaps something deeper, darker, had drawn him toward Lyanna. He barely knew her, and yet she had looked at him not with awe or fear, but with challenge. As if she alone could see beyond the silver hair and prince's smile to the man beneath, a man who sang songs not for glory, but because his heart was too full of sorrow to stay quiet. In the still of night, Rhaegar found her again, beneath the towers of Harrenhal, in a quiet corner of the old godswood. "You should not be here," she said without looking up. "Neither should you," he replied softly. They didn't speak of crowns or husbands or kings, only of music, of the realm's pain, of the quiet fury that stirred in every corner of Westeros. And when Rhaegar finally left her that night, he didn't feel like a prince. He felt like a man teetering on the edge of something irreversible. Brandon noticed. He watched his sister closely now. He saw her smiles had changed, shorter, sadder. When he confronted her, she told him nothing, but Brandon knew. And when they returned to Winterfell, he planned to speak with their father. But that time would never come, because the rumors traveled faster than ravens. By the time the Starks were halfway back to the north, a new rumor had taken flight across the realm that Rhaegar had disappeared, that Lyanna Stark had gone missing, that she had not returned to Winterfell at all. Some said she had been kidnapped, others said she had gone willingly. The truth was murkier than any of them knew. In King's Landing, when Aerys heard the rumor, his laughter echoed like madness off the Red Keep's stone walls. He laughed, "Letting eat each other alive," he chuckled, then turned to Jaime Lannister. "Send word to Lord Rickard Stark. Tell him to come. I will hear his cries for his daughter." He smiled wide, then added, "I will silence them myself." Meanwhile, in Dorne, Elia Martell wept in silence, not for herself, but for her children. The whispers said her husband had cast her aside. The truth was harder. He had never truly loved her at all. In Storm's End, Robert Baratheon roared like a wounded beast. "He stole her!" he bellowed, smashing his fists into stone. "That silver-haired bastard stole her!" The rebellion was born not in banners or swords, but in silence, in hurt, in betrayal, in the cold realization that the realm was already at war, even if no one had declared it. And at the center of it all was a decision no one truly understood. Why had the king not come to Harrenhal? If he had, perhaps he could have stopped it. Perhaps his presence, mad or not, would have kept the pieces from falling out of place. But he hadn't come, and now the game had begun. The raven came at dusk, its wings black against the blood-red sky. It bore the seal of House Stark, pressed deep in dark wax. Sir Gawain Gaunt, a knight of the Kingsguard, delivered it to the Iron Throne with trembling hands. Aerys did not touch the letter, he only stared at the seal and smiled like a man who had been waiting for this very moment. "Bring them to me," he said. And so it began. Lord Rickard Stark, Warden of the North, rode south with his son Brandon, believing they were summoned to discuss Lyanna's disappearance, to speak as father and brother, to clear the name of their house and seek the truth. But when they reached the gates of King's Landing, they were not offered a seat at the table. They were thrown in chains. The streets whispered. The mad king had struck again. Aerys met them in the throne room, his hair uncombed, nails clawed with filth, robes stained with ashes. The Iron Throne seemed to grow around him, its blades gleaming in the firelight like jagged teeth. Lord Rickard stood tall despite his age. Brandon, fierce and young, demanded justice the moment his voice was unbound. "You summon my father like a dog, and you hold him like a thief. Release him or face the wrath of the North." Aerys only grinned, tapping his nails against the throne's armrest. "My justice is fire," he said. Rickard Stark was strapped inside a great iron contraption hung above the throne room, like some grotesque altar. Beneath him, pyromancers prepared wildfire, their green robes rustling like leaves in a storm. Aerys turned to Brandon, who was being restrained by 4 guards. "If he is innocent," the king declared, "the gods will spare him." Brandon was tied to a device that held a noose around his neck. A sword was placed just out of reach. The rules were simple. If he could reach the blade, he could cut his father down, save him. But his arms were bound behind his back, and the noose tightened every time he moved. He choked, he kicked, he thrashed like a wolf caught in a trap, and above him Rickard Stark screamed. Not in pain, but in fury, in heartbreak, in helpless defiance, as the wildfire licked up his legs and turned skin to black. The court watched in horror. Some cried, some turned away, but none dared speak. When it was over, there was only silence and smoke. The mad king laughed until he could barely breathe. "Let the North howl," he said. "Let them freeze in their sorrow." Varys stood still in the shadows, his eyes unreadable. Even he, the spider who had seen countless cruelties, felt something shift in that moment. This was no longer madness, it was war. When word reached Winterfell, silence fell across the halls like snowfall. Catelyn Tully, betrothed to Brandon, wept into her sister's arms. Ned Stark, still at the Vale as ward to Jon Arryn, stood stunned. 2 of his blood were dead, his sister was missing, and now the North waited for his voice. It would not be long. Elsewhere, the winds of vengeance were already rising. In Storm's End, Robert Baratheon swore vengeance. "Rhaegar dies," he growled. "I'll drive my hammer through his silver skull." His knuckles bled from gripping the pommel of his sword too tight. Jon Arryn received a raven from King's Landing, demanding he send Eddard Stark and Robert as hostages, as a show of loyalty, as a warning to others. But Jon was old enough to remember Maegor the Cruel. He had seen what kings did when power and madness mixed. And so he made his choice. He refused the king's command. He raised the banners instead. Robert, Ned, Hoster Tully, the Riverlands, the Stormlands, the North. One by one, they stood. And still Aerys remained inside his castle, feeding the pyromancers, trusting no one but Jaime Lannister, who stood beside the throne with a face carved from stone. Rhaegar had not returned. He had taken Lyanna, or she had gone with him. No one could say for sure anymore. But in Aerys' mind, it didn't matter. The realm burned either way. He did not ride to war. He did not rally his forces. He gave only one order: burn them all. And still,
the raven flew under storm clouds, its wings soaked with rain, its message sealed with wax as dark as death. It wore only 2 words: it begins. In Storm's End, Robert Baratheon smashed his cup against the stone wall and marched out of the hall without a word. Eddard Stark followed closely behind, his face colder than the snows of Winterfell. Together, they walked toward war, not for glory, not for titles, but because they had nothing left to lose. Lyanna was gone. Brandon was dead. Rickard was murdered. And the king had laughed through all of it. The realm cracked open like a fault line. Jon Arryn raised the banners of the Vale, defying the Iron Throne with quiet resolve. Hoster Tully followed, binding his house to both Stark and Baratheon through marriage, Ned to Catelyn, and Robert to her younger sister, Lysa. It was a swift, ruthless move. Love had no place now. Only alliances mattered. War had begun. They called it Robert's Rebellion, but it wasn't just his. It belonged to all of them, to every house that had been shamed, every life that had been taken by royal madness. The North marched first, hard and fast, with snow still clinging to their cloaks. The Riverlands followed, their anger simmering beneath every stride. From the Vale, falcons soared, and from the Stormlands, thunder answered. The Targaryens responded slowly. Aerys sent ravens, not soldiers. He still believed wildfire was stronger than steel. He ordered his pyromancers to begin stashing barrels beneath the streets of King's Landing, under the Sept of Baelor, under the granaries, the docks, the city gates, even beneath the Red Keep itself. "They will not take my city," he muttered. "I will leave them nothing but ash." Only Prince Lewin Martell of Dorne still tried to keep the peace. His loyalty to Aelia kept him tied to the crown, but even he saw the cracks forming. Aelia, meanwhile, waited in the royal apartments, holding her children closer each night. She had heard the whispers of her husband fleeing with another woman, of war that might end with her babies thrown from towers. And still, Rhaegar did not return. He had vanished with Lyanna somewhere in the mountains, in a place only few knew. Some said he was building an army. Others believed he was searching for the last dragon. But the truth was far stranger and far more dangerous. He had built a place for her, a tower in the far reaches of Dorne where no one could find them. He called it the Tower of Joy. And in those stolen days Rhaegar believed, perhaps foolishly, that the world could be remade, that fire and ice would not destroy the realm, but save it. He spoke to Lyanna of prophecy,
of a prince who was promised, of a song yet to be sung. But Lyanna, fierce and wild-hearted, did not care for riddles. "The realm is bleeding," she told him one night. "You crowned me queen while the real queen waited in silence. My brother is dead. My father was burned alive. And still you speak of songs? I see what's coming. A storm of swords, a wheel of blood. I have to stop it." "Then go," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "Stop it." But Rhaegar hesitated. His heart was torn between the child she now carried and the realm he had left behind, between his love and his duty. By the time he decided to return to King's Landing, it was already too late. In the Westerlands, Lord Tywin Lannister remained still, watching, waiting. He had not declared for the crown or the rebels, but he remembered Harrenhal. He remembered being denied his hand. He remembered being slighted by the man he once served loyally. And Tywin never forgot an insult. In the north, word spread quickly of battles being won: Barrowton, the Green Fork, Ashford. The Targaryen loyalists began to falter, and when Robert Baratheon faced Prince Rhaegar at the Trident, all of Westeros held its breath. The hammer fell, and so with it, so did the prince. Robert stood over Rhaegar's body, armor dented, face splattered with blood, the rubies from the prince's breastplate scattered in the river like fallen stars. The rebellion had claimed its greatest prize, but for Robert, it brought no peace. He looked down and saw not a rival, but a man who had once sung songs. Eddard arrived just after the battle. He knelt beside the broken body and said nothing. There was no victory, only silence. But the war was not yet over. King's Landing still stood, and Aerys still ruled, hidden behind his walls of stone and barrels of wildfire. Inside the Red Keep, the Mad King gave his final command. "If they breach the gates," he said to his last pyromancer, "burn them all." The gates of King's Landing groaned under the weight of the coming storm. The rebels had crushed Rhaegar at the Trident. His lifeless body floated downriver, crimson rubies trailing behind him like broken promises. The Targaryen dream, once blazing with Valyrian pride, was now flickering like a candle in a crypt. But the king refused to see it. Aerys sat on the Iron Throne with a look that could boil rivers. His nails were bloodied from scratching at the arms of the throne, muttering endlessly about fire, fire to cleanse, fire to purify, fire to destroy. "Let them in," he said, voice cracked and trembling with joy. "Let them take the city, and when they're all here, I'll light the sky green." The pyromancers bowed low. The barrels had been placed in the cellars beneath the Sept of Baelor, under the granaries, the docks, the city gates, even beneath the Red Keep itself. Hundreds of jars, hidden like serpents, waiting for a spark. The city had become a trap, a tomb, and Aerys was ready to shut the lid on it himself. He had no army left, no allies. The Martells grieved for Rhaegar. The Reach was in chaos. The Stormlands and North surged forward, gaining strength with every village they crossed. The Vale's banners flew in every direction. Only Tywin Lannister had yet to choose. And then he did. On a bright morning, the Gold Lion arrived at the gates of King's Landing. 30,000 Lannister men stood behind him, shining with polished steel and spotless cloaks. The people cheered. They believed Tywin had come to save them, for the king. They were wrong.
Maester Belgrave rushed to the throne room. He said, "Your Grace, Lord Tywin is outside the gates. He offers his service to you. He claims loyalty." Arry sneered. "Loyalty? From Tywin?" He stood, madness blazing in his eyes. "Let him in. Let him come and kneel. But if he lifts even a single sword inside my city—" He turned to his last pyromancer. Burn them all." The gates opened. The gold Lannister banners flowed in like a river of gold, and then they drew their swords. Within hours, the city was drowned in screams. Men were cut down in the streets, guards gutted in the palace halls, women cried from behind locked doors. Gold cloaks abandoned their posts. The small folk hid in cellars as chaos overtook them. And in the Red Keep, the Mad King still sat on his throne, waiting for fire. Jaime, only 17, stood beside him in white armor and blood-soaked gloves. He had heard the order, burn them all. He had seen the last pyromancer racing toward the cellar doors, and he had realized no one was coming to stop it. No one but him. Aerys looked at Jaime with madness in his grin and fire in his eyes. "Your father is a traitor. Go, bring him his head." Jaime stepped forward, slowly, quietly. "No," he whispered, and then he drew his sword. The blow was quick, too quick for the king to scream. Aerys's blood poured down the Iron Throne like oil down a forge. Jaime didn't pause. He turned and ran, straight through the Red Keep, until he found the pyromancer racing toward the cellar doors. The second sword stroke.
The bells of King's Landing tolled like they were mourning a god. Robert Baratheon stood in the throne room days after the fires had cooled, staring at the Iron Throne like it was a corpse that hadn't stopped breathing. The blades that made it still gleamed, but something about it felt cursed now, like the blood of Aerys had soaked too deep into the metal to ever be washed clean. He didn't sit on it. Not yet. "Where is she?" Robert asked, pacing like a storm caged in armor. "Where is Lyanna?" No one could answer. Elia Martell was dead, murdered alongside her 2 children, the boy Rhaenys and the infant Aegon. Gregor Clegane and Amory Lorch had done the work under Tywin Lannister's banner. They said it was to show loyalty. Robert had called it justice. But Ned Stark did not see justice. He saw horror. He saw a little girl's body torn apart on her bed, a baby dashed against the wall, a mother violated and stabbed as she screamed for mercy. Ned's heart hardened in that moment, not against the Targaryens, but against the man he had once called brother, Robert. "Rhaegar took her," Robert kept saying. "He stole her. She didn't go with him willingly." But Ned wasn't sure anymore. He'd seen Rhaegar's body. It wasn't the face of a monster. It was the face of a broken man who believed in something no one else could see. And so, while Robert claimed the crown, Ned took only one thing: a vow. He left King's Landing in secret with a small band of loyal men: Howland Reed, Sir Martin Castle, Ethan Glover, Theo Wool, and a few others. They rode hard and silent, following old tracks and faded rumor south, deep into Dorne where no ravens flew and no Lannister blades dared follow. He was looking for the Tower of Joy. He found it. Nestled in the mountains of Dorne, where the red sun bled into the sand each dusk, stood a lone tower of pale stone. The banners that flew from its broken top were still Targaryen red, and at its base stood 3 knights in silver armor. Sir Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning. Sir Oswell Went, loyal even after his brother's disgrace. And Sir Gerald Hightower, Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. Ned rode up slowly, and when he dismounted, he spoke plainly. "I came for my sister." Sir Arthur only nodded. "And now it begins," he said quietly. "No," Ned replied. "Now it ends." The fight that followed was fast, brutal, and soaked in legend. 7 rode to the tower, only 2 survived. Ned and Howland Reed. Sir Arthur Dane fought like a whirlwind, 2 blades dancing through men like wind through wheat. He could have killed Ned that day, might have, if not for Howland's blade finding the gap behind his knee. When the dust settled, Ned climbed the steps of the Tower of Joy with blood on his hands and silence in his heart. He found Lyanna in a bed soaked with red, her breath thin and shallow, her skin pale as snow. She smiled when she saw him, small, sad, broken. "You came," she whispered. "I came," he said, falling to his knees beside her. The wind blew gently through the tower window, and in her arms she held a baby. Black hair, soft skin, a quiet, blinking stare. She was dying, and in those last moments, she told him the truth. Rhaegar hadn't kidnapped her. She had run away with him. They had married in secret. And this child, this boy, was not a bastard. He was a Targaryen, the true-born son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, the heir to the Iron Throne. "He'll kill him," she whispered. "If Robert finds him." She gripped Ned's hand, bloody and shaking. "Promise me, Ned." And he did. Ned Stark, the man who never lied, never broke a vow, made the greatest deception of his life. He took the child, told no one, not even Catelyn, not even Robert. He gave the child a false name, claimed him as his bastard, and carried that lie back north like a sword through his soul. Jon Snow, they would call him, but he was no Snow. He was the last dragon. And all of it, the rebellion, the blood, the war, had begun not just because a king didn't attend a tourney, but because he never listened, he never saw, he never understood that a single absence, a single silence could break the world. Winterfell had never felt colder. Eddard Stark returned with a silent babe in his arms and a wound in his heart no blade could reach. The child, Rhaegar's son, Lyanna's son, was no bigger than a sack of flour, but carried the weight of kingdoms in his blood. No banners welcomed Ned home. No songs were sung. The North was tired. So many had not returned. Brandon, Rickard,
the sons of Karstark and Manderley. So much had been spent to bring down a single throne. And now the war was over. But peace did not feel like peace. Catelyn Tully stood at the gate when Ned arrived. Her smile faltered when she saw the child. And though she said nothing, the cold between them never truly thawed after that. She bore it like a wound, believing her husband had returned from war with a bastard in tow. She would never know the truth. No one would. Only Ned, and Howland Reed, and the wind that howled through the godswood when he named the child John. Robert Baratheon was crowned king not long after, but the crown sat on him like an ill-fitting helm. He drank more, smiled less. Every time he looked at the Iron Throne, he remembered Rhaegar's crushed chest and Lyanna's empty bed. He ruled, but he never truly reigned. The Seven Kingdoms entered a time of quiet rebuilding. Tywin Lannister was named Hand. Varys remained in the shadows. Finterlippen smiled and collected favors. Cersei was married to Robert like gold chained to iron, a loveless match, a dangerous one. In the east, Viserys and the infant Daenerys were smuggled away, fleeing from the ashes of their house. No one paid much attention to them. 2 dragonflies flying across the sea, harmless, forgotten. But dragons don't stay forgotten forever. And somewhere in the north, Jon Snow grew up never knowing who he truly was. He would stare at the stars some nights, a sadness in him he couldn't name. He didn't know why he felt different, why he dreamed of fire and swords, why the cold didn't bother him the way it should have. He would grow thinking he was nothing, when in truth, he was everything. And yet it all came back to that moment, to that choice, that crack in the timeline of Westeros. The king had not gone to Harrenhal. It seemed so small now, a simple decision, perhaps rooted in fear, perhaps strategy, perhaps nothing more than madness whispering to him in the dark. But that one absence created a vacuum. It gave Rhaegar the stage. It let the realm pretend the king no longer mattered. And in his place, his son tried to right